Hey everybody, Tekking here, and once again, this will be a video with a very simple premise. We are discussing Sabos Bounty. That's right. In the latest issue, issue number 3 of the One Piece magazine in Japan, we found out the S-Dog's bounty. Are you guys ready for me to reveal this to you? This piece of earth-shattering information that will completely change your outlook on the One Piece world as we know it. Everybody already freaking knows what it is. 602 million berries. That is Sabos Bounty. And the general consensus in the fandom is that it is way too low. I mean, of course, you're always going to have some dissenters, but aside from that, most people think, yeah, 602 million, way too low for Sabo, considering that he's such a high-ranking member in the Revolutionary Army, and considering that Dragon, you know, is supposed to be the world's most wanted man, you know, and he's the head of the Revolutionary Army, and he should have, you know, at least a billion, or if not a billion, if we want to scratch the billion part, if we want to leave that alone to only, like, the ranking members of, like, Yonko crews and stuff, I was expecting at least 800 million berries minimum. Alright, but anyway, I've, on top of just discussing the bounty, because I figured that's kind of boring, because a lot of people have already done that, I drew up 5 explanations for why Sabo's bounty is as low as it is. So, let's just go through these. Once again, only my opinion here, so I would like to hear what your thoughts are, for below, whether you think it's unfair that his bounty is so low, or maybe you think that's accurate. Okay, so let's just go through these. Number 5, Sabo actually hasn't done enough to earn the higher bounty. Now, he might just have that 602 million because he is known as the chief of staff. Like, somebody went and told the Gorosei, you know, they have the CP9 and the CP0 agencies all over the world, so they probably know a little bit about the Revolutionary Army. In fact, it might not even be impossible to think that they're members of CP Aegis 0, like, that are infiltrating the Revolutionary Army, or vice versa. There might be some Revolutionary Army members working in the upper echelons of the world government. But anyway, they found out about the world government. They know that Dragon is the head of it, and then somebody told them, like, you know, oh, there's this guy named Sabo, and he's apparently the chief of staff. He's like the second in command. So just because of the status and the name, they equated it like, okay, let's give Sabo a 602 million berry bounty. He hasn't really done much of anything, or we can't really directly connect something that he has done, you know, to his action, because, you know, we know that he's been working with Hack and Koala. They're kind of like a group that they always stick together. We always know that they go around the world, but maybe there isn't just enough evidence to connect, like, you know, this event to Sabo. You know what I mean? So they might just know that his name and his rank, and just based on that information alone, without having a lot of other anything else to go on, any other evidence, they decided to give him the 602 million berry bounty just as like a preliminary, like, okay, he's pretty high up there, we'll give him this. And then after we maybe find out more about him, all the stuff that he's done, you know. I mean, Sabo, if we're being honest here, is basically a spy. You know, he's OOS, you know, so it's like, you gotta be careful when you're, you know, performing these acts of, like, espionage. So if Sabo's really good at his job, then the world government would not be able to connect a lot of stuff to him. The next one is, this bounty was given to Sabo before he attained the Mera-Mera-no-Mi. Okay, so this makes a lot of sense because he literally just got the Mera-Mera-no-Mi in Dressrosa. You know, he went to Dressrosa, he had the whole scuffle in the ring and everything like that. He was, you know, masquerading as Lucy, who is Luffy, and then he managed to take the Mera-Mera-no-Mi. And I'm sure the government knows about it, but we don't know if the bounty issued in the magazine was issued after Dressrosa, like it's the most recent bounty on his head, or it was something that he had before. In fact, this might be a thing where Oda wants to surprise us. Oda's like, okay, just to give you a general baseline of where Sabo was before he had a devil fruit, now we're gonna reveal, like, after Tautland, we're gonna get that, like, that moment at Reverie or something, and they might be discussing the Revolutionary Army. In fact, they most likely will be discussing the Revolutionary Army, and they might bring up Dragon's bounty possibly, and also like the other high members of the Revolutionary Army, including Sabo, and they might say that, yeah, Sabo's bounty was 602 million, but due to recent intelligence, we know that he now has the Mera-Mera-no-Mi, the same devil fruit as Fire Fist Ace, and we know how much that caused us. Remember, Ace himself had a 550 million berry bounty. Now, that wasn't all because he had a Logia power, but because it was really strong, but also because he was like the second, you know, fleet commander on White Blackbeard's crew and everything like that, but their bounties, 550 million, 602 million, those are at least comparable, that's not that big of a difference there. So they might be like, based on this new intel, we find it prudent to increase Sabos Bounty from 602 million to 850 million, or something like that. Like, that we might actually see an increase during the actual story coming up with Reverie, now that the new information has been revealed that he does indeed have the Mera Merinomi, which is a Logia, which is a very strong fruit. So that's the fourth explanation. The third one is that this is an interesting way of looking at this, because we don't actually know the total layout or the hierarchical structure of the Revolutionary Army. We don't really know it. We know Dragon is at the top. We know he's the head of the Revolutionary Army. And we know that Sabo is the chief of staff and that he's been called the second in command. But there's like a few ways you can look at this. You could look at it like Dragon is the guy that's the head of every Revolutionary Army base in the world, right? But then under him, you have, like, this guy's in charge of this particular branch, this guy's in charge of this particular branch, and then they each have people that work under them. So the basic way I'm looking at this is it's possible, I'm just saying it's possible, that Sabo might not be, like, the true number 2. It might not just go Dragon Sabo. It might go Dragon at the very head, and then it might branch out to, like, I don't know, 5 people that are, like, in command of certain, like, squadrons of the Revolutionary Army, and then under them you have their chief of staffs, and that's where, like, Sabo is. Sabo ranks very high. There's no doubt about that he ranks very high in the Revolutionary Army, but I feel like maybe if he was the true number 2, they would have said, the I don't know, the assistant leader of the Revolutionary Army. Like his title would have been a little bit different than just the chief of staff. But maybe it is. Maybe that is the case. I'm just saying that if it is the situation, because Dragon said that he was going to gather all the other, like, the top members of the Revolutionary Army, to the headquarters. So maybe then we'll actually get an explanation on how the hierarchy of this shakes down, kind of like the hierarchy of, like, the Marines, like we always thought, like, you have the admirals and then the vice admirals. For a while there, we thought, it was the fleet admiral, then the admirals, then the vice admirals. Then we find out about how there's, like, the commander-in-chief, Kong, who is, like, the pan-fleet admiral, like, even above Sengoku, and then we get into, like, the world government hierarchy. So maybe we might find out about, like there might be a slot between Sabo and Dragon. All right, and this guy, like, Sabo has 602 million, this dude has, like, 800 million, or dudette, I'm not sexist, and then Dragon has, like, 1.5 billion or something like that, some absurd number for Dragon. That's another thing, too. People are afraid that because Sabos Bounty was so low, that Dragon's might not be equally, if Sabo's 600, and if he's truly number 2, then Dragon's might not be as high as we thought it was. But I'm going to bring up that point to number 2 here, and that the world government keeps their bounties low on purpose. Allow me to elaborate on this. We all know that the world government is the supreme, power in the world. They control the military, the Marines, they control the cipher pulls, they control the warlords. They're the ultimate power here. Made a whole video about that. And their general, what they're trying to do is basically rid the rule of any opposition in the forms of pirates, where the Marines do most of their fighting against the pirates of the world, like the Yonko. Those are a concern. But then you also have the revolutionaries, who are not pirates. Their goal, they might do things relating to piracy, but their ultimate goal is to overthrow the world government. The pirates are just kind of out there doing their own thing. Not every pirate has a goal to overtopple the world government, Not every Yonko wants to do that. The sole goal of the Revolutionary Army is to do that, is to overthrow the world government. So, with that being in mind, you want to make sure that the world, like the population of the world of One Piece, knows that you're winning. Like, like, if the world government comes out and says that, the leader of the Revolutionary Army, his bounty is some absurd number, like, if we're being accurate, like, Dragon's bounty is like 3 or 4 billion or something, the world, the rest of the world might be like, oh, man, he's that big of a threat, seriously, oh, man, he's that dangerous, wow, he might actually do that. You might want to think, like there's other ways to look at this, but I feel like the world government doesn't want the people to think that they're losing the battle or to think that the Revolutionary Army has that much of a threat. Because if they make their bounties really big, you might have more people joining the Revolutionary Army. Like, holy crap, you mean that Monkey D. Dragon, they gave him a bounty of 4 billion? Man, he must be a real threat to the world government. The revolutionaries might have a chance of winning. I think I'm going to join up. So yeah, that's one way of looking at it. And that's sad because that might actually look at like Dragon's Bounty being kind of low as well. You know, Dragon's Bounty might not be ridiculously high as we think it is. It might only be a few 100 million berries higher than Sabo's. It might only be like 1 billion. You know, so it's like, if that's the case, that's kind of crappy. But remember, the world government doesn't want the world to think the Revolutionary Army is a real threat, because they're the world government. They're supposed to be the ones that are ultimately strong and they can handle any opposition, you know, or anything like that. So pirates are a little bit different, because pirates, you know, you can openly see what they're doing. You know, Kaido has this whole place under his control, Wano. Big Mom has basically an entire country under her control. You really can't hide that. The Revolutionary Army works in the shadows. They don't make a lot of their exploits public. You know, they're not like, because even Baltigo, the location of their headquarters for a long time was completely unknown. So they don't make these big, huge, like, oh yes, the Revolutionary Army is in control of all these places. Oh man, well they better have a bounty that's equal to that kind of power. They don't make this public. So the world government can probably be like, oh yeah, the Revolutionary Army, they're like, you know, they're kind of threatening, but not really. We got this. Don't worry, everybody, we're good. So that's one thing. And then finally, the last explanation I can come up for why Sabos Bounty is so low, and this is the one that's probably going to be the least, you know, impactful, like, really? But, you know, it's that it's accurate. It's completely accurate to his power. You know, we like to think that Sabo was, you know, going to earn a little bit more than that. But maybe that is, at the end of the day, what he's amounting to. Now, of course, bounty doesn't always directly mean fighting power, but it is a factor. Don't think that it's just ignoring that. And the fact that Sabo now has the Maramara no Mi, I think that will be a factor in either, you know, if this is his updated bounty with the Maramara, then it was even lower before this. And if it hasn't been updated, they are going to update it. Maramara no Mi, I think that is a fair factor to raise somebody's bounty. But keep in mind, you know, Sabo is the same age as Ace, and, you know, just a little bit older than Luffy, just 3 years older than Luffy. You know, so Luffy... Right now, Luffy is not at the same age that Ace was at the beginning, at the, you know, Alabasta, because Ace is like... So, I'm sorry, I'm getting confusing here. Okay. When Luffy started his journey, he was 17, Ace was 20. And now, 2 years later, Luffy's 19, and Ace would have been 20 in Alabasta and everything like that. So, it's not like Luffy is quite on the level that Ace was, you know, 2 years ago when they first met, but he's getting up there. So, Luffy's bounty, 500 million, Sabo's bounty, 602 million. Sabo's obviously a little bit stronger, because he's older and everything like that, but, you know, it's not like a ridiculously high number. You know, that coupled with the idea, like I said, the world government might be deliberately keeping the fact that he's, you know, part of the Revolutionary Army a little bit low. But it might just be accurate to that extent from what we've seen with Sabo's abilities. I mean, keep in mind, we only really got to see him fight in Dressrosa. We got to see him, you know, face off against everybody in the Colosseum. We got to see him face off against Fujitora and well, not Maynard, although he did fight Maynard. Bastille, the Bastille guy, the smallest giant in the Marines and everything like that. We got to see him fight with his Maramara no Mi, but he was kind of not really adept at using it yet. I just want to see, you know, a straight-up fight between, you know, Sabo and somebody that lasts a decent amount of time, and for us to gauge whether or not he's like, okay, he's a little bit stronger than Luffy, but not like a ridiculous amount. So, something like that. Maybe it just might be accurate. So, those are 5 reasons I came up with for why Sabo's bounty is as low as it is at 602 million. I would love to hear your thoughts on all this stuff below, so leave a comment. Also, I just wanted to apologize because I do have a little bit of a cold, so I'm sorry I sounded kind of congested through this whole video, but I wanted to talk about it. I had some free time before I go to work today. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Later.